Okay, we're going to go over how to write your conclusion and error analysis now. Okay, so here's a description of the criterion. So what we should do is, I'm going to teach you a couple things how to do this. So third person passive voice, I'm going to show you how that works. 1 page double space, 12-point font, 1-inch margins. So again, when you're seeing this one, you can see your layout right here, the margins. See right here where it says normal 111, that's what we want. Okay, so when you open it, it should be that. When you go back to home, so right now I have this in 11. I'm going to move that to 12. And you can do, I like Times New Roman personally. I think it's prettier. And so here's 12-point font times New Roman, 1-inch margins. So that's what we're looking for here. So when we're doing this conclusion/error analysis, again, I think I'll write this just how we might say it, and then we'll change it to passive voice, third person. So we want to summarize the main findings and explain why they're significant. So I don't know. So what's the goal? To put like maybe the goal of this experiment was to determine the empirical formula of a compound. So that's like, it's kind of like your purpose a little bit there. And the experimental results show that the empirical formula mine was AgCl2. This does need to be subscripted. So with mine, I have to click up here. Actually, right there, this will do it too. But you might have to click here, depending on yours, and then click on the word subscript to get to subscript. Now, if I don't take it off that, you see how it's doing everything subscript? So you gotta take it off. So in mine, you can just click here. But if you have an older version, you have to click this little button and then uncheck the box. Period. See, now it's regular again. Okay, and then, so for example, right now I'm writing it in third person passive voice, but if I wanted to, if it wasn't in passive voice, I might say like, my results showed that. See, we're not gonna use my, I, anything like that. We're gonna do third person. So you can say the results showed, or maybe the results, or maybe even better, the experimental results. I can spell experimental. Spell check will find it, right? See, spell check, gotta love it. Showed a percent error of, and then whatever your percent error was. I think I just have mine here still. So my percent error was 22%. So my percent error was 22%. My sig figs aren't correct here, FYI, so you should not have the same number of sig figs. The experimental percent silver was, so my experimental percent silver was, let's see here, 58.7%. And the theoretical was, spell check, was my theoretical, 75%. Again, make sure you double check these sig figs, they're not correct, 75%. Okay, so we should have had, what is it saying? That we should have had 58.7%, right? Or no, sorry, we should have had 75%, but we only have 58.7%. So that means in mine, now yours might have been very different. You might have had, this number on yours could have been bigger. So like this might have been 85%, right? Could have been 85%, could have been 50%. Whatever yours was here, make sure you write whatever yours was. So in this case, I'm just going to leave it at 50% because that's my last one. So the question is now, what went wrong? So a lot of people are like, nothing went wrong. I did it perfectly. Okay, well, if you did it perfectly, this is what you would have had. And your percent error would have been 0. So if your percent error was 0, amazing, that never happens, right? That's not true. And this wasn't, I'm just going to put 50%, it wasn't 75%, then something went wrong, right? So now the question is, what went wrong? That's the other piece of this problem, what went wrong? And so this is what we're talking about here. Here we just summarized our findings and explained why they're significant, right? Here's what we got and here's what we should have gotten. And so you could say this showed that in the experimental, or in the experiment, there was, in this case, less silver than there should have been, or something of that sort. Or there's more silver. There's so many better ways you can say this. But summarizing why is important. And then suggest studies you might have confirmed your result. Okay, so if I had more time, how could I fix this? Right? Or how could I have done this again? Maybe repeated. There's all different ideas, like, you know, there's so many different ideas on this one. I'm not going to give you those ideas. And then the next piece says for the error analysis, identify 2 to 3 errors that occurred in lab and extrapolate and explain how those errors affected your results. Okay, now, a lot of times errors, people will go like, I spilled something. Okay, first of all, that's first person. And you can't just say something spilled. I read the math wrong. No. Okay, all of these errors are not okay. So it needs to be very specific. So for example, and I pointed this out to some of you, you notice like you could say the watch glass. The watch glass, or you could say like an error that could have occurred in this experiment is that the watch glass was not rinsed fully. Okay, yes, that's an error, but don't forget this part. How did that error affect your results? And you can say, due to the watch glass not being rinsed fully, the experimental percent, or the experimental, hold on, right, there we go, experimental percent of silver was less than it should have been. Right? Again, this is going to completely depend on what you got here. Like, was your silver higher or lower? If it was, we were supposed to have around 75%, but if we have 50%, it's lower. So this is going to differ depending on what your number is. So it might have been more than, right? More than it should have been. Again, it completely depends on your percent yield of your silver, right? And so it completely depends on that. So you need to think about it like, if the watch glass wasn't rinsed completely, did you end up with more silver or did you end up with less silver, right? Or you could have, if you weighed it wrong, right? So how did that weight wrong? So you could say like, or you didn't weigh to constant mass, like maybe due to time, the silver chloride was not weighed to constant mass. Okay, because of this, or you could say it was not weighed to constant mass, which or you could use so many different words here. So which led to there being a higher percentage of silver in the empirical formula. Again, depending on your results, this could be lower, right? And then you need to justify why. So like, don't just say higher or lower. I always tell people throw in some numbers, right? So you didn't weigh to constant mass. So how did that affect your answer? So this piece right here, it takes a little while for us to really be able to answer these, to figure out what our errors could have been and trying to figure out how it affected our results. So this one, just again, if you have 2 of them for this lab, that's fine. The next one you'll have, when we get to experiment 3, you'll have so many errors you could write 6 pages about it. Okay, so that's pretty much kind of what you're going to do. Obviously, it's going to be a lot longer than this. This needs to be double spaced. So if you just go up here, double spaced, and it's 1 page. See, this is not even close to a page. It doesn't have to be an entire page. It just can't be longer than a page. And you can definitely expand on this because I barely talked about our results here, but you can definitely expand on this part. And then you can, obviously, I only use 1 sentence to talk about this. Again, things you might want to talk about is what the goal of the experiment was, what the results showed, what the error was, and then compare the theoretical yield to yours and talk about where that error came from. Why isn't it the same? Okay, and so that's pretty much what the conclusion and the results are that I'm looking for, the conclusion and the error analysis. It's really 2 parts. It's really the conclusion and then the errors. Okay, so that is how to write this piece of your lab. And again, you're going to submit this in Canvas under conclusion and error analysis. And the rubric is there for you to see all the different parts of how you get your points. If you have any questions, please let me know.